Picture this. You're just sitting down to eat your lunch at work, completely unaware that the coworker sitting right across the table from you has just handed you a literal death sentence. It's a medical mystery so incredibly terrifying that there are only 3 recorded cases like it in over 150 years. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're diving into a true crime video that explores a really dark descent into a nightmare that was hiding in plain sight. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more daily crime updates, because I promise you this case is going to completely change how you look at the people you work with. All right, let's get right into it.
So, to really grasp how insane this ultra-rare incident is, we have to travel over to an industrial manufacturing plant in northern Germany. Among all the seasoned, older workers out on the factory floor, there was this 23-year-old engineering student named Felix. He was the youngest employee there, just picking up part-time shifts to pay for his side expenses while he focused on getting his college degree. You know, he was harmless, super quiet, and just trying to get by in this massive industrial machine.
The nightmare actually began on what seemed like a totally normal afternoon, July 29, 2016. Felix sat down in the company mess hall to eat his pre-cooked lunch. He's eating his lactose-free oatmeal, and he sits down at a table with 2 older coworkers in their 50s, Klaus and Otto. Trying to, just break the awkward silence, Felix politely asks them how their day is going. Klaus just coldly tells him to eat his food and get back to work. And Otto, well, after this really long, strange pause, he just touches Felix's shoulder and complains that his own head and stomach are aching, and that his day was basically terrible. So Felix apologizes to Otto, finishes up his meal, and heads back out to the floor. But this is where things just fall off a cliff. Literally, 15 minutes later, he is struck by these agonizing stomach cramps. At first, he just figured, hey, maybe I accidentally bought regular milk and my body's rejecting it. But the situation escalated with terrifying speed. 15 minutes in, the cramps. Within 2 hours, violent, totally uncontrollable vomiting. And over the next 2 weeks, this creeping, terrifying numbness spread all the way from his fingers up to his elbows, eventually pulling him into a state of horrifying, total paralysis. I mean, the decline in his health was just so rapid and completely inexplicable. Even though his doctors were aggressively prescribing steroids and vitamins, Felix's body was just shutting down. It actually culminated in this terrifying moment where his legs just gave out entirely while he was trying to go to the bathroom. Crawling across his bedroom floor like a child just to reach his bed, that's when Felix realized his body was completely betraying him. Absolutely terrified, he calls his mom and begs her to rush him to the hospital right that second. Once he's in the ICU, the neurologists check his muscle reflexes and they find nothing. His nervous system is just failing to send any signals at all. And then, an MRI reveals a truly chilling picture. Felix's brain cells are swelling so severely that his brain is literally on the verge of collapsing inward. But here's the most baffling part for the medical team. Every single test they ran for viral infections, bacterial infections, or autoimmune disorders, they all came back completely negative. These doctors were basically fighting a ghost. With Felix's brain threatening permanent, irreversible damage, one of the neurologists tries to assess if he's even conscious. Barely awake, struggling just to form basic words, Felix manages to force out this chilling whisper, "Mouth metal, taste water." When the doctor tries to help him take a drink, the water just spills right out of his paralyzed lips, and that is when the horrific realization hit her. Felix wasn't just sick, he was describing a metallic taste in his mouth. Some unknown, incredibly destructive substance had actually been ingested. He gets urgently transferred to a top-tier university research hospital, where basically the finest medical minds descend on his case. But things only get worse. It wasn't just his nervous system failing anymore, his liver and his kidneys were starting to shut down too. This completely ruled out any kind of simple autoimmune reaction. Yet, even with a massive team of specialists running every diagnostic test you could possibly conceive of, they were at an absolute dead end. This invisible toxin was systematically destroying him from the inside out, and nobody knew what it was.
So now the police get involved, right? Suspecting foul play or some massive environmental hazard, police and forensic teams practically tear apart the factory where Felix worked. Days turn into weeks as investigators retrace his exact footsteps. I'm talking testing the factory's food, testing the water supplies. They even brought in specialized equipment to analyze the very air for invisible toxins. And the result? Absolutely nothing. The environment was completely clean. The investigation hits a total brick wall, all while Felix quietly slips into a deep, irreversible coma.
As the months drag on, Felix is lying there unconscious, developing these horrific, deep, flesh-exposing bed sores from the paralysis. The police had pretty much given up, and the hospital was really just focusing on keeping him comfortable. I want to pause for a second here. If you were the lead investigator on this case, how do you think this deadly, invisible toxin was being administered without leaving a single microscopic trace anywhere in that factory? Drop your theories in the comments below. I'd love to read them.
The breakthrough only happened because one relentless doctor absolutely refused to let Felix slip away into some unsolved cold case file. He spent hours and hours poring over rare global medical journals, desperately searching for any symptom progression that matched Felix's agonizing sequence. And finally, deep in the archives, he found it. A single 150-year-old medical case that perfectly mirrored Felix's exact symptoms: the severe stomach pain, the creeping numbness, the swelling brain, and the failing organs.
So the doctor orders a highly specific blood test, pretty much praying that he's wrong, but the results confirm his most terrifying theory. Felix was suffering from extreme acute mercury poisoning, a dose so heavy and so lethal that it was essentially a death sentence. There is literally no cure for this level of heavy metal toxicity. The medical team finally knew exactly what was killing Felix, but the horrifying question remained: who gave it to him?
Fast forward over 2 years. Felix is still in his hospital bed, essentially a living corpse. But back at that exact same manufacturing plant, a highly disturbing culture had quietly become the horrific norm. Employees were constantly, inexplicably getting sick: stomach aches, severe headaches, dizzy spells. It happened so often that the workers just popped some painkillers and went right back to the floor. A dark cloud of paranoia was hanging over the local community, with rumors spreading through the town about an industrial curse. But the truth is, they weren't cursed, they were being hunted.
The entire nightmare finally blows wide open in May of 2018. A 26-year-old worker named Elias sits down in the mess hall and opens up his lunchbox. But he notices something super bizarre. There's this strange, unnatural powder sprinkled all over his sandwich. Elias immediately knows something is deeply wrong, and he calls the police. A rapid forensic analysis of his lunchbox revealed the horrifying truth. That seasoning on his food? It was cadmium, a highly toxic heavy metal.
So the police arrive, and based on Elias's report, they zero in and raid the home of one specific employee. And guess who it is? Klaus. The exact same quiet, dismissive, 50-something coworker who had sat directly across from Felix during that fateful lunch over 2 years prior. The very man who cold-heartedly told Felix to just eat his food.
When investigators finally breach the entrance to Klaus's basement, guys, they uncover a literal house of horrors. It was a massive, makeshift chemistry laboratory. Klaus had spent decades buying incredibly rare, lethal chemicals online. When the forensic scientists actually analyzed the jars in that room, they were horrified. Klaus was manufacturing custom-made toxin combinations that were actually more deadly than the chemical weapons deployed in World War I. Let that sink in.
But the absolute nail in the coffin, the chilling piece of evidence that tied it all together, came when police recovered years-old CCTV footage from the factory. This grainy surveillance video captured a totally cold-blooded betrayal. Klaus, methodically sneaking into the mess hall and sprinkling a massive, lethal dose of mercury directly into Felix's pre-cooked meal. Klaus wasn't just a murderer, you guys. He was a mad scientist using his own coworkers as human guinea pigs to test his toxic creations. In Klaus's twisted little psychological experiments, they spared absolutely no one. Remember Otto? The guy who sat next to Klaus and complained of headaches on the exact day Felix was poisoned? Well, Otto was Klaus's closest friend at work. Yet Klaus had been secretly feeding Otto a lethal cocktail of lead and mercury for years. By the time Klaus was finally caught, Otto's kidneys had completely shut down, leaving him permanently dependent on a dialysis machine just to stay alive.
Finally, in 2019, this silent serial killer is brought to justice and sentenced to life in prison. But here's the crazy thing. During all the intense police interrogations, Klaus never once broke. He never revealed his sinister motive or why he chose to torture his own colleagues. And tragically, just 10 months after Klaus was locked away, Felix's agonizing 2.5-year battle came to an end. The young engineering student finally succumbed to the poison and passed away.
Today, surviving victims like Elias and Otto are left dealing with irreversible, lifelong physical damage inflicted by a monster who was hiding right across the lunch table. It is a really chilling reminder that you never truly know the people you work with every single day. So let me ask you, has a coworker's behavior ever given you an unexplainable, dark vibe? Share your stories down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching this true crime video. Be sure to like and subscribe for more daily crime updates. And as always, stay safe out there.